This is the Insta360 Flow 2, a new, significantly cheaper version of the Flow 2 Pro. While the Flow 2 Pro is a great gimbal, it's not quite cheap. At $160, it's also slightly more expensive than the DJI OM7P. Today you will see what the Flow 2 lacks compared to the Flow 2 Pro and how it compares directly to the OM7P. But why a comparison with the OM7P and not the cheaper DJI OM7? Because the Flow 2 is closer in design and features to the OM7P than the OM7. As you can see, I have the bundle with the AI tracker here, but the Flow 2 is also available without the AI tracker for an even lower price. There are 10 categories that determine the quality of a smartphone gimbal. Check out all 10 categories carefully if you want to decide between the two, because they are all important and interesting. At the end, I will tell you how much the different versions cost and who I would recommend the OM7P to and who the Flow 2 to. Let's take a look at the design. And by that I mean the aesthetic design. The Flow 2 looks almost identical to the Flow 2 Pro. However, it lacks the ring light here at the top of the handle. And perhaps most noticeably, the back of the gimbal arm does not have the transparent design of the Flow 2 Pro, but is kept rather simple. Nevertheless, the Flow 2 also has a modern design language and, in my opinion, looks a bit better than the DJI OM7P, which hardly differs from its predecessors on the outside. But that is of course a very subjective opinion, and I understand if you see it differently. The handle is similar in length and both gimbals are comfortable to hold. The handling of the Flow 2 is identical to that of the Flow 2 Pro and also very similar to that of the OM7P. If you have used a smartphone gimbal before, you will find your way around all of them equally quickly. The controls on the Flow 2 are much more minimalistic than those of the OM7P, even though everything you need is there. On the other hand, the joystick on the OM7P is somewhat better defined. One of the special features of the OM7P is the zoom wheel. The cheaper OM7, for example, doesn't have one. In fact, for me, the zoom wheel is one of the OM7P's weaknesses, as you often bump into it unintentionally and change the settings without wanting to. Overall, this category is very balanced, although I like the Flow 2 slightly better. The Flow 2 and the OM7P can be activated in the same way, by simply folding the gimbal arm upwards. This means that both gimbals can be folded up again quickly and easily. The clamp can be left on both gimbals when stowing them away. On both, an extension rod can be pulled upwards out of the handle and bent by up to 90 degrees at the upper end. This means that the Flow 2 has an extension rod just like the Flow 2 Pro. While the cheaper OM7 from DJI does not have an extension rod, this is not a distinguishing feature between the two Insta360 gimbals, which is important because this type of selfie stick is an extremely useful feature, especially if you want to film yourself. The tripod feet can be pulled out of the handle on both gimbals. This works similarly well, but, and this is important to me, the OM7P stands on extremely wobbly legs and can easily fall over, whereas the Flow 2's tripod is very stable. I have no idea what DJI was thinking here. The Flow 2 and the OM7P are similar in weight and size, whether folded or unfolded. The only relevant difference in this category is therefore the more stable tripod of the Flow 2. Both gimbals come with the usual shooting modes. A follow mode where the tilt axis and pan axis move, a pan follow mode where only the pan axis moves, so the gimbal does not move up and down, but only sideways, and an FPV mode, which not only allows movements of the pan and tilt axis, but also of the roll axis. You can therefore also perform lateral rotational movements. If you don't want to worry about the mode at all, you can also use the automatic mode on the Flow 2. Depending on the movement pattern, the gimbal then decides which movement it will follow and which it will not. Both gimbals also have a lock mode in which all axes are balanced, but only the Flow 2 has the so-called Active Plus mode, a kind of turbo mode that enables particularly fast movements. In this category, there are therefore slight advantages for the Flow 2 overall. Range of movement, a very interesting category. This is because unlike the Flow 2 Pro, the Flow 2 cannot be rotated sideways completely and infinitely around its own axis. Nor does it have a free tilt mode, with which you can perform a complete rotation in the tilt axis. This category therefore contains some of the most important differences between the Flow 2 and the Flow 2 Pro. But how well does the Flow 2 compare to the OM7P? In the two important pan and tilt axes, That is, for horizontal and vertical movements, both have an almost identical range of movement. I can't see any relevant advantage for either gimbal here. In the roll axis, so for lateral rotations in FPV mode, the Flow 2 has advantages. It can be rotated further here, but since you will only very rarely perform movements in this axis, this advantage is not really decisive in my opinion. Yes, of course, the main function of a gimbal is and remains stabilization, especially for longer camera movements. A gimbal simply enables smoother movements and more cinematic shots. And when it comes to stabilization, there is hardly any difference between the two gimbals. Manufacturers have been reaching their limits here for some time now. Both gimbals stabilize the shots well and do what they are supposed to do, although beginners in particular should know that no gimbal can compensate for up and down movements when walking. You'll still have to try to compensate for these movements by walking correctly. Incidentally, the Flow 2 was provided to me by Insta360, but this video does not contain any additional paid sponsorship. There are only a few differences between the Flow 2 and the OM7P in terms of basic functions. However, this changes in the following categories. So let's talk about tracking. To be able to use all tracking features, you must use the respective manufacturer's app for both gimbals. This is the only way to get the best possible tracking performance. And you don't need the AI tracker from Insta360 or the multifunctional module from the OM7P for this. Tracking in the app works excellently and very efficiently with both gimbals. Both gimbals are very responsive and recognize the subject even if they have been lost for a long time. Framing can be corrected on both gimbals using the joystick. But the Flow 2 has a few unique features when tracking in the app. Only the Flow 2 allows you to set the correct framing right from the start. The subject is then always kept in the top right-hand third, for example, even in subsequent shots. This can be very useful. Only the Flow 2 has with Tracking Plus a tracking feature for use on the tripod, where the field of view is enlarged by switching off the internal stabilization and the tracking efficiency is improved once again. With Dual Lens Boost, the OM7P now also offers a feature for improved tracking performance. However, this feature only works with newer iPhones. Only the Flow 2 can reliably track subjects from a distance using active zoom tracking, even at very high zoom factors of over 8x, so up to 15x. Only the Flow 2 can dynamically adjust the zoom factor to the distance, as when the subject moves closer or further away, and only the Flow 2 is capable of group tracking. In other words, tracking entire groups of people so that individual members are not cut off at the side. The Flow 2 can track groups of up to 8 people. When using the app, the Flow 2 therefore has all the tracking functions that the Flow 2 Pro also has. And overall, it clearly has more functions than the OM7P. The Framing Grid and Tracking Plus are two features that I use all the time. I'm using an iPhone on both gimbals, and as far as I know, all the features mentioned are available from the iPhone 12 onwards. But there are limitations with Android smartphones. Group tracking, so tracking of multiple people, is only available for certain Android devices. And active zoom tracking, which means tracking at very high zoom factors, only works on iOS. You should notice if these features are important to you. In contrast to the Flow 2 Pro, the Flow 2, just like the OM7P, does not support Apple DocKit, which is Apple's integrated tracking technology. So if you want to track subjects outside of the Insta360 app, for example yourself in a video conference, or in a native camera app, or in a social media app such as TikTok or Instagram, then you need an additional hardware tracker for the Flow 2. And this is where the DJI OM7P has an advantage, because the multifunctional module for the OM7P is included in the standard version. There is also an AI tracker for the Flow 2, but this is an accessory and must either be purchased separately or as part of a bundle for an additional $20. As I said, we'll take a closer look at the prices in a moment. Both trackers work well, enable good and fast tracking of the subject, and of course also work with Android smartphones and independently of the app with which you want to use the camera of your smartphone. Both allow you to control the camera from a distance using hand gestures, and both also have an integrated spotlight to improve the exposure in low light conditions. In direct comparison, they both have advantages and disadvantages. The multifunctional module of the OM7P not only allows you to start and stop a shot, you can also adjust the position of the subject in the framing from a distance, even if this only works to a very limited extent, because tracking is interrupted, a new position is assumed, and then tracking is resumed. This means that only a lateral correction really makes sense. An upward correction is difficult to achieve. It also only makes sense if you are filming with the selfie camera. Otherwise, it's not possible to recognize the framing. But it's one more feature. The module also has disadvantages in comparison. It's attached to the side of the smartphone clip. And check this out. This is a magnetic phone mount. It's magnetically attached to the back of an iPhone. Can be left there and can also be used as a small stand. It also allows you to attach your iPhone to the gimbal even faster and without a clamp. Perhaps the most useful gimbal accessory. It's available for both gimbals, but as the multifunctional module is attached to the clamp, it's not compatible with it. The AI tracker of the Flow 2, on the other hand, is, because it's connected to the upper USB-C port, so directly to the gimbal head. In addition, only the AI tracker from Insta360 is capable of tracking animals and can also track dogs and cats. The tracker also works at a greater distance, meaning gesture control works up to a distance of 10 meters, while DJI's is limited to 5 meters. On the other hand, DJI's multifunctional module has yet another feature. And that brings us to the unique features of the two gimbals, apart from the differences we have already seen. So which features are unique to the OM7P and which are unique to the Flow 2? I think perhaps the biggest strength of the OM7P in this comparison is that the module also has an integrated receiver for the Mic Mini. You have to connect the multifunctional module to your smartphone via cable and then you can connect it to a Mic Mini. Unfortunately, the microphone itself is not included in the standard packaging. As a result of a firmware update, the module is now also compatible with the Mic 2 transmitter. This is a cool feature, as the audio quality is significantly better when used with a receiver. Both gimbals can also be used as a power bank for your smartphone and have a similar battery life. Both gimbals should have a runtime of around 10 hours without a module or tracker. However, you should be aware that both the AI tracker and the multifunctional module significantly shorten this runtime. Only the Flow 2 has an NFC field at the top with which it can connect to your smartphone and the Insta360 app much faster. The apps from DJI and Insta360 come with a range of special features that can only be accessed within the app. In addition to the tracking features already discussed, there are various filters and special recording modes. For example, the Flow 2 has the hoop mode for basketball games, a live mode and a widescreen mode. The OM7P on the other hand has a parents and kids mode or the very interesting story mode where the gimbal supports you to make very special recordings. But, and please correct me if I'm wrong, apart from that, the DJI app doesn't have a single feature that wouldn't also be available for the Flow 2. Conversely, the Insta360 app has 4 important and useful features that the OM7P does not have. You can connect the Insta360 app to a second smartphone and control the Flow 2 from a distance with a second smartphone, including a preview image. This is extremely useful, especially for solo creators, and I've already used this feature frequently on the Flow 2 Pro, and this works with any smartphone, not just iPhones. The Insta360 app has an integrated teleprompter feature, and with the Flow 2, you can also take 360 panel photos. So 360 photos like with a 360 camera. And also very important, only the Insta360 app supports recording in ProRes and therefore in log. This can be important for some filmmakers. With the OM7P, you have to use a different app and fall back on the hardware tracker. Okay, which smartphones are the two gimbals compatible with? And the all-important question, how much do they cost? Both support similarly sized smartphones and both support a maximum weight of 300 grams. In contrast to the OM7P, the Flow 2 also supports somewhat smaller and lighter smartphones, such as the iPhone 12 mini. You should therefore choose the Flow 2 for such a smartphone. The OM7P costs $150, the Flow 2 costs only $110 and is therefore significantly cheaper. But this version does not have an AI tracker. The bundle with the AI tracker here costs $20 more, so $130. You can find links to both gimbals in the video description. If you use the link for the Flow 2, you will also receive a magnetic phone mount as a free gift, giving you a gift that is worth another $20. So which gimbal should you choose? Both are great smartphone gimbals. And as you could see, they are very close to each other. The Flow 2 looks better in my opinion and has a number of unique features. And if tracking outside of the app isn't that important to you, the version without the tracker is a very affordable yet very capable gimbal. The OM7P comes in the standard package with the multifunctional module, which also allows a connection to the Mic Mini or the Mic 2. So if you own one of these microphones, the DJI OM7P is a great choice. It must be said that Insta360 now also offers its own microphone, the Mic Air, whose receiver you can connect to your smartphone and use on the Flow 2. The AI tracker bundle of the Flow 2 together with the Mic Air is also slightly cheaper than the OM7P bundle with the Mic Mini transmitter. And I wouldn't say that the OM7P is the smartphone gimbal for Android and the Flow 2 Pro or Flow 2 are the gimbals for the iPhone, as many now believe, because there are only a few features of the Flow 2 that are not available on Android. If you want more information, there is a detailed tutorial on my channel about the OM7P and the Flow 2 Pro, which, as you have seen, works very similarly to the Flow 2. And give me a like as feedback if this video was interesting for you. Stay tuned and see you next time.